Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for a new Film Fanatic show. It is 10:17 on a beautiful Monday morning. Hope everyone's doing good. So yeah, I want to thank again all the cool folks that showed up to the show on Saturday, Oktoberfest. It was the first time that this festival had a go of it. Had some great bands on the bill. There was the Midnight Riders, Uv, Osmia, the band I've been playing with since December of, well, last year now, and then also Scobie from Portland, Maine. Super fun. It was, I felt like the whole thing was a pretty good success. It was the first time going for a new, venture as far as a big festival, pretty ambitious. They had a food truck or a food area, and then they had a beer tent. So it was cool. They really lucked out with the weather. They had a really nice sound system. Everything was backlined, and they had all kinds of equipment there set up. So it was great. So I want to thank the folks that came out and supported that, and especially TJ and Danny who put the whole big thing together. So anyway, I want to again getting switching gears slightly here. Thank all of we've gotten some new subscribers here on Film Fanatic. And also, I really love, along with some new subscribers, I've gotten some new folks who have been commenting on the videos, and it's super fun and super cool. And can't do, any of this stuff without support. So I really appreciate all the support that's been coming in, and also, keeping this thing alive. So really, really cool. So today's show is going to be on the new trailer that just dropped. I've been talking about it. I did a show on this, well, more or less the character, and that is this whole show is going to be centered more or less on Guillermo del Toro, uh, fantastic director, and also the new Frankenstein movie that is coming out. There was a brand new trailer that was released. I think it was like early last week, and I'm trying to see when it's actually coming out. Well, it says it's supposed to be coming out in August, but I think it's coming out. Obviously, it's coming out later than that. It looks like it's going to be coming out on November 7th. So just really a few weeks away, which is exciting. And I saw the new. I've seen about two trailers for this movie, the new Frankenstein adaptation by Guillermo del Toro. The first one was like a teaser trailer, and then I think it was last week or so they had an official trailer, like a 2 minute full trailer. And when I talk about trailers and movies and things like that, I try to, well, stay away from trailers because I think that they kind of ruin the surprise most of the time. I don't know what it is, but it's been this recent trend with a lot of studios to kind of like give away key plot points in trailers, and I think it's their way of, because the industry is struggling with trying to fill the seats and trying to make money, so they feel inclined to give away too much information. I don't understand the logic behind it, but it's usually, when it happens, I just feel like it's bad marketing. But occasionally there's still trailers that come out that are still, really good. I think a good trailer should pique your interest and also leave you with more questions, but really whet your appetite to see it. So, but the trailer for the full length trailer for Frankenstein, again, it's coming out November 7th, I believe. Looked really good, and I had heard about this movie probably like 2 years ago, and then there was a teaser trailer that came out, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and very excited. I love the monster Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's book, of course. Frankenstein is, I think, one of the best, one of the greatest horror novels, and also one of the the grace, one of the greatest tales about humanity in Gothic horror, and it's a classic book. I've read it many times, and it's a book that I revisit. I've read quite a few times, and I revisit it every few years, and I reread it. And I did a show a few months ago about Frankenstein and all of the Frankenstein monsters that have come, Frankenstein movies that have come out over the decades. And one of the things, like I grew up like most people, you know, with the universal monsters in most cases, and I think it's safe to say for most kids growing up, the universal monsters were that was like my more or less my introduction to the myth and the mythology around monsters. With the classic original Frankenstein starring Boris Karloff, Dracula, Bela Lugosi, and then also the Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr., the Invisible Man film that came out, The Mummy that came out also starring Boris Karloff, also The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is The Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite Universal monster. That movie to me is just so spectacular. I think out of all of those classic movies that came out, that movie is like timeless. There's no dated quality to it. It's just awesome. And I bought a really beautiful edition of that movie on Blu-ray. But that being said, I'm a huge Dracula fan, obviously, and werewolf fan, and obviously Frankenstein. And the thing that's kind of interesting is I feel like, and I know I've talked about it before, but I feel like with the Dracula or vampire, or more so with the Dracula genre of films and again, there's been a billion movies made about Dracula, and subsequent vampire movies, obviously inspired from Bram Stoker's classic novel, well, another iconic, right up there with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, another iconic essential book. And that's a book too that I just read again recently. Um, and I feel like with Dracula movies and with werewolf movies, but not so much with Frankenstein movies. And again, this is just my opinion, but I feel like with the genre of all of the Dracula films, there's definitive versions of that character, and I feel like there's a definitive movie that really completely gets that character and is a fully realized version of that character. And I also feel like in the genre of werewolves, that is also the case. And in the case of Creature from Black Lagoon, without a doubt. The Mummy, also, I think Boris Karloff's Mummy is really, really great too. I think there probably needs to be maybe a better kind of representation of that character that is maybe a little bit more contemporary, but I still think that original version with Karloff is a horror classic. But I don't feel the same when it comes to Frankenstein movies. I think that there are so many great ones, but I don't feel like for me, I always make the analogy, or the way I kind of explain it is with Dracula films, particularly Dracula films. I mean, there's so many great classics, but for me, for many, many, many years, Francis Ford Coppola's version, Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Gary Oldman, was my creme de la creme, my top film representing Dracula. Also, massive fan of Frank Langella's Dracula, which is a movie I just love to death, and I still feel that movie is not really talked about enough. And then when it comes to the more low budget seedy world of horror exploitation, Dracula vs. Frankenstein is also one of my favorites. And then, and there's so many. But for me, after its release, and I have bought it on, I saw it in the theater twice, and then I bought a beautiful edition of it on Blu-ray. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu for me, and then also I can't forget the original Nosferatu, but for me, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, which came out in December of last year, now is the definitive version of Dracula, Bram Stoker's classic story. To me, that's the creme de la creme, the best vision of that monster. And I look at it too. I often say, make the comparison, say, with my favorite comic book character of all time, Batman. For years and years and years, my favorite Batman film was the original Tim Burton adaptation. But again, Batman also, I feel like, is just as an iconic character. There are so many versions of the Batman, and there are so many great representations of that character. And for years and years and years, the one that was, I felt, the definitive version of this iconic character, which is my favorite comic book character of all time, was Tim Burton's Dracula. But sorry, Tim Burton's Batman. And then, so fast forward many years later, and then after that, it was when Christopher Nolan did his take on the Batman character, starring Christian Bale as the Batman, and especially The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger. That to me became the definitive version of that character, and that kind of became my favorite version of those characters. And also Batman Begins, I think that is a masterpiece as well. But there's something extra about the Dark Knight. Not the third Batman film was incredibly disappointing, and such an anticlimactic letdown, and too long and drawn out, and just a little bit. There were some really bad calls when it came to the story and the plot. But for many years, The Dark Knight became now my new number one version of the Batman. And again, there's so many other versions. You do have other, you have, the Batman and Robin films. You have the TV show, which is not a movie, but still, and then the animated series that have been out for many years, so great. And then there's animated Batman films that are just incredible. There's Batman and Robin, the Joel Schumacher version. There's there's so many campy and ridiculous versions. I really love the Batman and Robin, the real over the top version with Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, because it's so campy and ridiculous that to me it's like a cheesy version, very much in step with the ridiculousness of the TV show, which I love. You can't beat it. And again, it reminds me a lot of an exploitation movie, and kind of in step with Dracula versus Frankenstein. But but for many many years with that character, my favorite superhero character, I felt The Dark Knight was like the definitive version of Batman. But like, and I've made this analogy a lot, but like the Robert Eggers version of Nosferatu, which now is my number one version of that classic character of Dracula. It wasn't until when Matt Reeves released the Batman starring Robert Pattinson as the Batman, which came out a couple of years ago. That movie now is for me the definitive version of that character. I love that movie to death. I think it's a masterpiece. The tone, everything about it is just perfection. And then when it comes to werewolf movies, I feel like the same thing. I mean, there's so many great werewolf films, but Dracula character of Dracula and all of the films tied to about that character, and as well as the billions of vampire films. You know, I'm when it comes down to it, I'm more of a between when it comes down to vampire lore, vampire films, Dracula films, and then werewolf films and werewolf lore, whole mythology tied to it. There's definitely um, vampire films and all of those things are the most popular. They kind of there's more films about Dracula and also vampires. That out of all of the universal monster themed things genres, I feel like the vampires and Dracula are the biggest. The A lot of that is due to Twilight too as well, but those are the biggest. That's the biggest genre in those universal monster themed genres. And but I've always kind of loved the vampire. I've always been more of a werewolf guy. I love werewolf movies, really great werewolf film. I'm more into that. I find that more exciting and a little bit more primal. And so, in comparison to vampire movies and Dracula films, in comparison to all of the werewolf films, there's a lot more vampire films out, and Dracula films. There's maybe not even maybe half the amount when it comes to werewolf films, but even though there aren't as many, I feel like there are, and there is like a definitive version of that character or characters. You know, you have classic films like An American Werewolf in London, which is just a classic, which for years has always been my favorite. And then also, I would say, Silver Bullet is another one that is just fantastic. Paul Naschy, who is one of my favorite actors in the world of exploitation, has made so many wonderful, iconic werewolf films. But I would have to say my favorite version of the werewolf story or Wolfman story is without a doubt The Howling. To me, that's the definitive version of that kind of character or that world. But when it comes to Frankenstein, I don't know. Like there are some really great ones, but I feel like in comparison to like say films like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu and The Howling by Joe Dante, there isn't there isn't that equivalent when it comes to Frankenstein. A lot of great ones, but I feel like they just haven't really nailed it yet. And I feel like it's such an iconic character, Frankenstein. There needs to be, and also in step and in line with what Matt Reeves did with the Batman. There, there needs to be a Frankenstein film that is at that level, and I just feel like there just isn't. It's always been on in balance. Not It's never been in balance quite for me, and there hasn't been that definitive version of that monster. And with the new Guillermo del Toro film, I'm pretty optimistic. Maybe this could be it, but we'll see. We'll see. I think throughout the years, there's been you have all of the classic Hammer Frankenstein films that are really really great, and of course the original Boris Karloff. I mean, that's still an iconic and incredible film. I do think that film suffers a little bit, and also with Bela Lugosi's Dracula, again, not taking anything away from those classic original Universal film monster movies, because they are iconic. I mean, they established these characters kind of in the lore of our cinematic landscape, if you will. But I do feel like both of those movies have this, I don't know, dated quality to them that doesn't necessarily hold up as well. I think, and again, I watch a lot of trash all the time. I love exploitation movies, but the thing that I love about those movies, and I know it's a totally different kind of uh, film or genre, and those films, I think for me, their strength a lot of the times is because they are so incredibly dated. But it's for me with those films, it works so well because it fits totally in step with that whole idea of it's so bad it's good. And I think because it's so extreme in nature and when it comes to those kinds of aesthetics, it makes the film even better because it has certain data qualities. A lot of films I don't feel age that well because they don't have that fun um, longevity to it, if that makes sense. But that being said, I still think that those films, Bela Lugosi's version and Boris Karloff's, are iconic classics. But I feel like those movies are a little bit dated and not necessarily the best way. And so there needs to be a good adaptation. There was the big film that came out many years ago, and I covered this in this show. Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein with Robert De Niro as Frankenstein, and I don't know. I never really was a big fan of that movie, to be all honest. Like I thought it was good. I remember being really excited when that movie came out. It's a big budget. They had this huge budget. Kenneth Branagh is an amazing director. I mean, he's done all of the great Shakespearean adaptations. Throughout the years. I mean, he's made so many great versions of all of the a lot of classic Shakespearean plays, and I think he does that style better than anyone else. He also did a lot of other films as well, and I think he's a really great director. He did the first Thor movie. He's done quite a few other movies, and I do like him quite a bit. But I just felt like the tone of that movie, and again, I haven't seen it in so many years. I do want to watch it again, but I just remember the tone of that movie just felt like, and again, the novel is so different than any of these adaptations. Mary Shelley's book, it probes kind of the whole notion of Frankenstein and the quest for the theme of Prometheus, where a person can achieve the power of gods and be able to kind of create life, and it dives so deeply into that whole kind of philosophy or outlook, and I feel like that's never really been tackled so much, like the deeper aspects of that book, along with it being just a really great gothic horror story. The deeper kind of philosophical implications that that book explores, like that hasn't really been so much explored in a lot of the movies. They tried doing that with, like, or Kenneth Branagh tried doing that with the films, but I think with his film with Robert De Niro, but I feel like that film is, there's something about it that is just a little bit so overtly melodramatic that it's almost um, hard. It's hard to take seriously in some ways. It just doesn't. It just has this funny tone where it's just like it's so serious and so over the top that it doesn't really. It has this dated quality to it, and it's just it's hard to like to lose yourself in that story. I feel like it's a little bit too overly dramatic, and and it does feel like it has this. It. I mean, again, that's Kenneth Branagh's background, but and I think it spilled over into him directing that version of Dracula, but it has this overt kind of Shakespearean thing to it, which I don't think in the context of that movie works. It's just a little bit too melodramatic, and it feels almost like it's an opera. I don't know. And I always thought that movie was good, but I never thought it was great. I always thought it was a little bit. kind of silly at times. Had some big plot holes. Again, I haven't seen it in a long, long time. It's been out for many, many years. It is something I want to revisit, but I just thought it missed the mark overall. And I don't think that movie was a big commercial hit. I don't think it was. I think it was kind of a disappointment when that came out. But anyway, I just feel like there hasn't been a real definitive version. There hasn't been a Frankenstein film that is on par with like The Howling or even Lon Chaney Jr.'s original Wolfman, which I think is really, really good. And with Robert Eggers' Dracula or Nosferatu, and then Matt Reeves' Batman, there just hasn't been that definitive. Or can't forget The Creature from the Black Lagoon, where it's like this is the definitive version of that character. So I think as a fan of, as such a huge fan of Frankenstein, it would be so great if this movie can nail it, and I think it's got a big potential. Potentially, I think it could really achieve those things, but we'll see. It's coming out November 7th. It's and so the new Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein movie is coming out November 7th, and so in a few weeks. It's a Netflix original. It's going to be streaming, but from what I've been reading about it, it's going to be in theaters as well. But I don't know if it's getting a massive wide release, which makes, if that's not the case, that makes like zero fucking sense to me. I mean, because Guillermo del Toro is a huge name. The cast for this movie is incredible. And again, the main thing with the show is the trailer does look really good, and I'm really excited to see it. Netflix, I have mixed things about feelings about when it comes to Netflix, because again, they were the first streaming platform to really launch and to kind of kick off this whole digital age that we live in. And they were also, I mean, you can say there's a lot of good and bad, I think, but they were pretty innovative in a way of, they were also, along with being the first kind of streaming platform, they were also they created this new way or method that you could experience movies. And they were also the first company to, as far as streaming companies go, to put together their own original productions. And they were responsible for a few pretty good movies. And one that I can think of that I thought was actually pretty good was the Hellraiser adaptation. And Mindhunter, which is an incredible David Fincher series, which I heard they're bringing back, which is just a masterpiece. So they have some good things that they've put out, like some really good things. So, but I hope the film gets a full release because I definitely want to see it in the theater. I think if they decide not to have this film in a wide release, like a theatrical run, I think that's just like ridiculous. But it's such a weird thing because there's like, I think it's going to be released online through Netflix, in theater, and then also in theaters at the same time. And to me, it's like, as far as wanting box office return and making money, I don't know. I don't know what it feels like. It's going to backfire, but we'll see. And the cast looks really great. I mean, the cast looks fantastic for this movie. Mia Goth is in this film, who is my favorite actress around. Oscar Isaac is in this film. Christopher Waltz is also in this film. Ralph Ineson, who is just amazing. Charles Dance is also in this film. I mean, the cast is stacked. And I do love Guillermo del Toro as a director, but I will have to say I feel like he can be kind of hit or miss. I think sometimes, and this might be a controversial thing to say because I think Guillermo del Toro has done incredible films. I think the greatest film he's ever directed, which is just a total fucking masterpiece for the ages, which I really want to get and need to get on Blu-ray, Pan's Labyrinth. I think that movie is just a complete, top to bottom, through and through horror masterpiece. It is just an amazing film. And, easily the greatest thing he's ever done, and easily a modern classic. I mean, that movie's been out for a long time, but that movie's just a masterpiece. And other movies that he's done have been good. Um, we have The Shape of Water, which came out in 2017, which was one of his more recent films, which is a good movie. And it won some awards. I think it won some Academy Awards, which is a good movie. And it's a very emotional movie. It's kind of a melodrama, definitely inspired, like I said in the beginning of the show, big time from Creature from the Black Lagoon. And it has, so much that it's taken from that classic film. But I don't know if it's like a masterpiece. Like, it's good, and it's a love story, and it's a gothic kind of horror film. But I don't think it's on par with like Pan's Labyrinth, even though the Pan's Labyrinth is more of a fantasy based film. It's a lot more, it's a lot darker. But I wouldn't say it's on par with that film. I mean, it's hard to put anything on par with Pan's Labyrinth as far as I'm concerned by any director. Um, and then the one film that I do not like that he directed, which I I was just like, it's such a great premise. It's such a great story. This is something I've always wanted to see, but I feel like the story had so many plot holes in it. It was so like kind of silly. The story wasn't strong. Pacific Rim. I don't really like that film. I'm a massive Gaiju fan, and I love Toho Studios, and the visually some of the stuff in Pacific Rim is great, but I think like the story and a lot of the acting in the film is just like somewhat ridiculous, and I just never really got into that movie. I think that it's got some good aspects of it, but I always thought that movie had a lot of holes in it for me. Yeah, Idris Elba's in that film, but I just felt like his character was just like so one dimensional, and I don't know. I felt like the stakes were never high in that movie. That movie was somewhat praised, but then also a lot of people I felt were let down by that movie. I feel like it was like equivalent to when Pacific Rim for me was like equivalent to when Peter Jackson, when he came off of doing, the glorious Return of the King and the original first three Lord of the Rings movies, which are, masterpieces. He came out of that, and he decided to do a big screen adaptation of King Kong, which is, I think that movie's way. I actually think it's a lot worse than Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim, I think, is has some good things in it. I mean, with the robots, and there's some great battle scenes, but the character wise and story wise, it's kind of cockamamie. Um, but in comparison, King Kong, when Peter Jackson directed uh, the big budget version of King Kong, which was, I think, followed. It was his first movie after doing the Lord of the Rings films. That movie is just, I think, terrible. Like, it's so bad and it's so cheesy. The writing is terrible. Jack Black is just so incredibly annoying. I never liked that movie, and I feel like it's kind of, even though I think Pacific Rim has more redeeming qualities to it, and visually it's better, it's a little bit more exciting, but like, ultimately the story and everything is super flatline. I kind of feel like it's equivalent to that movie. It's a big $1 billion disappointment. Yeah, and the other films that he's done, Guillermo del Toro, Hellboy. I think that's an awesome movie. He did two or three of those films, and Hellboy is actually a pretty fun movie. I think they did a pretty good job with adapting that classic character. But again, it's good. It's not like, I just think it's so hard because Pan's Labyrinth is so goddamn good. I don't know. Like, it's good. I like it. I think it's better than Pacific Rim. Um, Crimson Peak, which he did in 2015, I started watching that movie and I did not like that movie. I thought that movie was super flat, super underrated, super overrated. It's essentially like a haunted house film. I didn't really like that film at all. Nightmare Alley, which was another film I heard was not that good. I haven't even seen it. But I don't know. Like I heard that that movie was super mixed, and I just after seeing some of these other films, especially Pacific Rim and trying to make it through Crimson Peak, I yeah, I just had no interest. Even though I haven't seen it, I heard it was not that good. Another film that I think is another masterpiece that he directed is The Devil's Backbone, which is a Spanish film that he directed, um, which came out in 2001. Devil's Backbone is such a badass movie. That movie is amazing. I think it's right up there with Pan's Labyrinth. It's essentially a ghost story. Super awesome. I love that movie to death. I only have that on. I don't really have many of his films on Blu-ray, which I need to get, especially Pan's Labyrinth. But I have it on DVD, and I also have Devil's Backbone on DVD. And that movie, I think, is just amazing. I think it's one of the greatest kind of classic ghost story films. It's amazing. That movie is so great. Again, kind of all over the place. Kronos, which was the first film of his that I saw, which again is another Spanish film from 1992, pretty old school. Good movie. It's a vampire movie, and it's a big time kind of reimagining of vampire lore. It's really good, but I don't know. It's a little bit. I feel like a lot of people put that movie on such a high pedestal that it's just this groundbreaking, foreign film, groundbreaking foreign film horror masterpiece. I don't think. I think it's a little bit of a misstep. I don't really feel like it delivers quite as as boldly as a lot of people have said that that film does. Like I think it's good. It's an interesting take on the whole vampire kind of mythology, but it's okay. It always left me. It's beautifully shot. It's another one of his early Spanish films, and it's beautifully shot, and it's a well conceived movie. But I just feel like I wanted more from that. I wanted it to be more. I wanted it to feel more like a vampire film because I feel like it tries to get away from that, some of that mythology, and I don't know. It's okay. It's good, but I don't think it's. I think it's a little bit overrated. Another movie that I did not like at all that he directed was Blade 2. Blade, the original, is starring Wesley Snipes, of course, is one of the greatest vampire movies ever made. Um, yeah, that movie is so badass. I finally got that on Blu-ray, um, and I think it's one of the best and one of the earliest, you know, examples of like adapting a classic superhero character. But the original Blade is just amazing. That movie is such a masterpiece. And Guillermo del Toro did Blade 2, which I do not like that movie really at all. And I don't understand why so many people love that movie. I feel like he tried to do similar things like with what he did with Kronos. Is like tried to. It feels less and less like a vampire movie. He tried to like I don't know reinvent the wheel, and I just yeah I never really liked that movie at all. I've tried giving it a chance. I think that movie is super slow. It's super anticlimactic. I remember going to the theater to see that movie and being so disappointed after seeing Blade, which is just a masterpiece. It just doesn't deliver that high caliber action. It doesn't deliver the horror element like the first one does. Yeah, I never really liked that movie at all. And so again, it's another example of for me. Again, this is all just a matter of my own opinions. But so Mimic is another film he directed in 1997. Another old school film. Not a very good movie. Kind of a bad Alien knockoff. Not a very good movie at all. I never really liked that movie. So it's like super hit or miss. So I'm, and he did this compilation horror compilation scary stories to tell in the dark, which is pretty good too. He worked with other directors and stuff. So I don't know, but Guillermo del Toro is looked at by Hollywood and a lot of people as being this master filmmaker. And again, with those some of those films, Pan's Labyrinth or Devil's Backbone, you know, those films are masterpieces without a doubt. I love those movies to death. But everything else he's done, and those films are pretty old. I just feel like are kind of not very good and just kind of hit or miss. And I kind of feel like Guillermo del Toro, without any disrespect, because anybody could who has been able to put out a movie on par with Pan's Labyrinth, you're not going to find it. That movie is just so damn good that you have to give him respect. But I think I, I feel like as a director and his body of work, I feel like Guillermo del Toro is a little bit overrated. I think people put him on this pedestal of like being like the greatest director around, and he's made again masterpieces, but a lot of his other films are, I mean, Pan's Labyrinth's almost 20 years old, and it's like he hasn't really made a movie nowhere near as good as that forever, and it's like I kind of feel like he's a little bit overrated, and people put him on this pedestal as being this master. And I look at directors like that have a bigger track record as opposed to like putting them on this mantle when they have like just one movie, but if they have like a series of movies. So, but I'm very optimistic, and I definitely want to. I hope this film gets a full release, Frankenstein, in theaters, and I will definitely I will definitely go see it. I'm very excited to see it in the theater. I think it's meant for the theatrical experience, but we'll see. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.